Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, the Eagles have set up Jalen Hurts beautifully with his supporting cast in 2022, but how tight now is the leash? That's coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome into this Wednesday edition of the show. I'm Louis DiBiase. He's Gino Camilleri, and today's episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Blue Nile. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On listeners get $50 off $500. Use the promo code Locked On at checkout. Gino, what's going on, brother? Day 3 of the post-draft offseason 2022 edition, and not feeling anything crazy yet when it comes to the dead zone. Still recapping an awesome 2022 draft haul by the Eagles. We got the schedule being released next week, May 12th. So, you know, the offseason really, you only get a little downtime in June, and then training camp starts up in July. So, you don't really have to go that long without football activity. Maybe not at all.
That's why this league is honestly my favorite. And
yeah, me too.
It goes all year long. There's not a downtime at all. And especially in Philadelphia, Lou, because this team has been known, especially in this portion of the year, that they're always open to moves. I always go back to 2017 with LeGarrette Blount, arguably one of the biggest additions for that Super Bowl run. Came in that time frame. And now when I look at these moves, Lou, I don't look at them in the light that I looked at them post 2017, because that team was older. They were trying to repeat what they did have. I think now if they are to bring in veterans, I think it's for a different purpose. I think it's to mold that next generation, especially in an area like defensive back. If you were to bring in a guy like James Bradbury, for example, if he were to get cut by the New York Giants, I think that's a good transition piece to have there for the young guys like Zach McPherson, Tay Gawan, Kari Vincent, go down the list of all the guys that are sitting in that position. And I just think that right now it's okay, how can we set ourselves up for 2022 without hurting future preparation?
It's having your cake and eating it too, Gino. And that's what they're doing right now. They're set up beautifully down the road. 2 first-round picks next year, 2 second-round picks in 2024. But as I talked about on yesterday's show, this roster looks really good for 2022. I mean, you go down the list in the NFC, LA, Green Bay, Tampa Bay, are those the only 3 teams you can guarantee are going to be better than the Eagles next year? Probably. Like, you can make the case for Arizona, San Francisco, Dallas, Washington, a bunch of teams, but you can make the case for the Eagles over those teams as well. Gino, they are really set up awesome. And like you said, it's more sustainable on both sides of the ball, especially on offense right now. So many of these core players on offense are under 25. And, we talked about it a little bit on draft night day 1 when they traded for A.J. Brown. But, Gino, just looks like this team is really determined after everything that happened with Carson Wentz and his supporting cast. It just feels like they're even more determined to build around their quarterback and do better by Jalen Hurts. And if Jalen Hurts isn't the guy, like, giving him no excuses, like finding out, okay, if he can't do it with this supporting cast, we're going to find the next quarterback. And that rookie coming in is not going to have to throw to Dorial Green-Beckham and Josh Huff and, Nelson Aguilar, who was number 17 at the time. That was a different Nelly. It just feels like they're way more motivated. And on paper, we talked about it, outside of 2019, this team in 2022 looks more talented than any this past decade outside of, 2010.
Yeah, and I'm going to make an analogy here to Formula One, because that's been pretty big on Netflix with the show that they have. Yeah. And I've honestly been watching some Formula One. I like it a lot, but it's almost like the cars that they assemble, right? Like, these are multi-million-dollar cars. They have them tuned up to the nth degree to make sure they operate at the fullest extent and to the best of their efficiency. Well, they have to have a driver to drive that car.
Right.
That's Jalen Hurts right now. And they have this car and they're saying, hey, if Max Verstappen doesn't win these races, we're going to go and get another guy, right? That's exactly kind of what the Eagles are doing. And I think Jalen Hurts, I liked a lot of the things he said in his press conference today, how he took a little bit of a different approach to this offseason, tried to bring more elements into his game where he might not have looked in the past. And I'm very excited to see him. He's an easy guy to root for, right? Sure. But at the same time, so is this offense. And if you don't see this offense operate how you think it should, yeah, it's time to put a new driver in the car and see if we can win some races.
Because, Gino, right now you look at it. I mean, DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown back-to-back years. The Eagles are killing it with the support system they're building post-Wentz. I mean, you add those two top receivers. I don't know. Are they the most talented duo of receivers in Eagles history? You might be able to make that case. I mean, yeah, there was Harold Carmichael and Mike Quick. You could talk about Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin, but the upside and the level of production of DeVonta Smith and A.J. Brown, it could be the top ever in franchise history. You've got a top 3 offensive line. You've got a top 5 tight end. You have one of the most efficient and explosive running backs when healthy. You have one of the fastest deep threats in the league as your wide receiver 3. Kenny Gainwell is like your 6th option. Zach Pascal 7. Yeah, Gino, there's the car is not going to be the issue anymore. This time it's going to be down to the pilot, because this offense, I think, is on paper top 10, and it has top 5 upside if the quarterback doesn't hold it back.
I completely agree. And with the car analogy, it's like we're not driving a car that has 3 wheels anymore. We're not driving a car that has Dorial Green Beckham.
Or an automated car. You know, this is one that's stick. You got to know how to drive stick to take it to another level.
Exactly. Yeah, you have to know that next level.
Yeah, you could drive it in neutral a little bit, but it only gets to a certain speed. You need a guy that knows how to get it up.
I need to learn how to drive stick.
So do I. Really bad, man.
Yeah, that's like one of the necessities of life. But no, I think Jalen Hurts now, and you made a good point, like one of the best duos in Eagles history ever. Probably the best trio with Dallas Goedert as well. I mean, it's hard to look outside. I mean, you could look at Alshon Jeffrey and Zach Ertz and what they did, but they didn't really have like that third top level player.
Yeah, Nelson Aguilar, as good as he was in 2017, wasn't DeVonta Smith level.
No, and DeVonta Smith, I think, is only going to get better from that. Dallas Goedert is only going to get better from that move as well, because I think I said it the other day, like, who are you going to bracket? Who are you going to close off here? Who are you going to double? Because if you double A.J. Brown, it's going to leave DeVonta Smith open. It's going to leave Dallas Goedert open. It's going to leave Quez Watkins open. What I think the next evolution is, Lou, is this offense running more empty sets and being to the fullest extent.
Which helps a mobile quarterback, by the way.
Yes. Oh, yeah. When you run empty sets, it drops everybody back into coverage. It'll only help Jalen because he could read the numbers pre-snap. He could recognize the shift post-snap. And if it's not there, your first inclination as a rushing quarterback, take off down the field. And that only makes Jalen Hurts more efficient, Lou. And that's the thing we're saying. If all the things going into the car, if the gas is top of the line, the tires are top of the line, but the guy can't drive the car, it's time to move on. And I hope that Jalen Hurts makes that next step. I think you would have to believe that he would have a better year in terms of passing touchdowns, in terms of passing yards, probably rushing yards as well. I would assume that with a better catcher of the football like A.J. Brown than somebody like Jalen Reagor being one of their options, his completion percentage will go up. His ability to trust his receivers will go up.
That's how it works with quarterbacks, man. Like, look what happened when Josh Allen got Stephon Diggs, the difference that made. Look what happened when Kyler Murray got DeAndre Hopkins, the difference that made. The Eagles got their guy. We talked about it for years there. We're like, man, if Wentz could get, because the Eagles, they certainly did try to build around Carson. I don't want to make it seem like Howie Roseman said, Carson, go carry that end of the 2019 season squad all of the time. Like, yeah, they never got that guy. And that's the one we were talking about. They never made the A.J. Brown trade in the Wentz era, but you know, they spent first and second round picks on receivers and on running backs and on the offensive line year after year. And they were trading for veterans like Mike Wallace, Golden Tate, Deshaun Jackson. They certainly did try.
How far we've come from Golden Tate.
Yeah, man. They failed. And again, every approach they took, it was like they went young with DGB and those guys, and it didn't work. Then they went with the veterans, and outside of 2017, it didn't work. Then they went back young, trying to go with Reagor and J-Jaw. Nothing worked. They tried, but it didn't work. This time, it feels like the execution is more on par, and we've seen the leaps that quarterbacks take when teams do nail this part of the talent acquisition period. And so now with Jalen, as we've mentioned, man, there's no excuses. Everybody else has done it when they've gotten their A.J. Brown, and he's got 2 of them. Because DeVonta Smith, I don't know, he might be better than A.J. Brown next year. Like, we can't overlook DeVonta Smith and the leap he can take next year.
Yeah, now you're going to get both of those guys in one-on-one situations, and I think they're going to get a lot more opportunities to make plays on the ball, because when it came late in the season, and especially in that Tampa game, right, a smart defensive coordinator, what they were going to do, take away DeVonta Smith. which they did for the most part, and the result held. But now you're going into a game and a division, Lou, where what secondary is really primed to cover all of these guys?
Yeah, if James Bradbury gets released, who's the best corner in the division? Diggs? And as good as Diggs was last year, I'm not scared of him shutting a guy out of a game like A.J. Brown or DeVonta Smith. He's not that kind of player.
No, and I believe he's a guy that kind of reaped the rewards of playing some bad quarterbacks who threw some bad balls, and Jalen Hurts being one of those guys. And if he hones it in and just plays within the offense, Lou, I think it will take the next step. And like you look at a guy even like Grant Calcaterra, we got to figure out the pronunciation on that one too. It's like
Arcega-Whiteside. Yeah,
exactly. But we'll figure that out. But he was his tight end in college, like that familiarity element, and bringing in A.J. Brown, who's his best friend too. I think that only makes it easier as well. And I just believe the happiest guy in the building right now, Lou, has to be Nick Sirianni. That guy has to be chomping at the bit to start game planning for this offense, because what he did last year with a decent group of weapons and the ability to game plan, and he was pretty good, especially towards the end of the year. Now you bring in even more elements with A.J. Brown. He in his own right is a queen on a chessboard, somebody that can move around, do just about everything. Like you wanted Deebo Samuel, here's a guy who's pretty freaking close to Deebo Samuel in what he could do with the ball in his hand.
100%, Gino. We'll continue to get into what Jalen Hurts has and what the expectations are next year. What is going to be good enough for Jalen, the floor he can set for the Eagles to not go for a quarterback in 2023, because believe it or not, all the mock drafts are coming out and that class looks really strong on paper early on. So we'll get into it coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's show is sponsored by Blue Nile. At BlueNile.com, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, from creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams to gifting a classic and timeless jewelry piece, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. From diamond jewelry, cocktail rings, tennis bracelets, they have it all for this Mother's Day. Get your mom, your wife, the girlfriend, the in-law something special this year at Blue Nile. And whether she prefers a statement piece or everyday subtle elegance, BlueNile.com has fine jewelry options for every mom. Shop high-quality classic diamond earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, or gemstone pendant necklaces. Whether it's everyday fine jewelry, engagement rings and bands, they've got you covered. And if you're looking for jewelry, but you're having trouble choosing, Blue Nile also has experts on hand 24/7 on the phone or with online chat to help you find a memorable gift at every budget. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On listeners get $50 off $500 in this podcast exclusive. It's only good through Mother's Day. So again, use that promo code Locked On. That's promo code Locked On. Plus, every order is insured, ships free, and arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever peace. Go to BlueNile.com today. All right, Eagles fans, thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. It's episode 3 this week of 5. Download it into your phone on any podcast platform, video form as well on YouTube. Make sure you hit us up as well on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at GC24_football, and at DiBiase LOE. Getting into today, Gino, the amazing opportunity Jalen Hurts has in 2022, an opportunity I'm sure Carson Wentz and a lot of quarterbacks in the Eagles past and across the NFL would absolutely kill for. But with that amazing situation also comes raised expectations. And now I wonder, because, Gino, this roster is pretty good. And as we mentioned in segment 1, they could be a top 5 team in the NFC this year. If they win the division and if they're a top 4 seed, I'm not going to bat an eye. And we know that. We know Jalen Hurts and his legs, his clutch ability, his leadership, it can get you to a certain floor. Even last year, it got you to the playoffs, especially now with a good roster. You could even win a playoff game. You could make a conference championship. Look at the Tennessee Titans and what they did even with an okay quarterback in Ryan Tannehill the past 3 years. They were a 1 seed. They made a conference title. Like, you can get to a certain floor. I just wonder now, with a really good roster, you're going to be even more enticed to not make crazy changes when you keep tasting deep playoff runs, right? And so now I wonder, though, are the Eagles going to – I don't think they're going to become a Titans-like team, but it'll be interesting with now how good the roster is. If Jalen takes a step but not a huge step, if you're going to be comfortable resetting at that position and going quarterback in 2023. I think they won't settle, as we've talked about before, but it's more fascinating now with the strength of the roster than it was before.
Well, I think there are a lot of different variables to
Of
bring into
course.
play here.
Absolutely.
One, let's start with the draft that happened a couple days ago. They didn't make 3 first-round picks. And why?
Mhm.
Well, they moved one of those first-round picks to get a 2023 pick and
Yeah.
also to get a 2024 second-round pick, which they absolutely robbed the Saints. And after coming
gosh.
away with what they did, I believe that's so even more with Jordan Davis, A.J. Brown, and what they were all able to culminate the rest of the days, too.
You think
But
that's what the Saints would have got in a haul if they're the ones like fighting for the now getting
Oh, yeah.
picks, and the Eagles are the one that came away with that is amazing.
Yeah, it really is. But you look at the rest of it too, Lou, and I look at Jalen Hurts, what year he's in. He's in year 3. Well, was he a first-round quarterback? No. So does he have that fifth-year option? No, he does not. So
Good
when
point.
would you have to pay him? Probably after this season. So I don't think it's like, yeah, you can hang on. Like, no, it's either like let go of the boat and let it drift out to sea or keep it at the dock.
There's no middling
There's
again.
no
Like
middle.
it feels like it's either make or break. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, and with the core around it too, like A.J. Brown, he signs that extension for another 4 years. DeVonta Smith is going to have to be paid in a couple of years. Like, you don't want to pay your quarterback and logjam yourself up at other positions if you're not 100% certain that he is the guy.
Right.
And I don't think that they're going to be in that area. And I think the history is telling, like with Carson Wentz, they weren't happy with where they were. They were willing to go and see, is Jalen Hurts the option? So the guy that they replaced Carson Wentz with to see if he was the right choice, I have no doubt that they would be willing to go to that next step if Jalen were to go to that same direction, especially because of the state of the roster, the contract situation, all the draft picks that they have. It's a perfect storm. Now, at the same time, Lou, devil's advocate to that, if he does work out and you do pay him, you still have DeVonta Smith on a rookie deal. You have most of your core pieces locked up, including Dallas Goedert, A.J. Brown, Jordan Mailata, most of your offensive line, major parts of your defensive line, your cornerback who you're probably going to extend to Darius Slay, Avonte Maddox too, all of these draft picks. Then we get into the point, Lou, where we were in 2018 saying, okay, what are the luxury picks that we can make?
That's a great place to be in, man.
While picking the best player available. I look at Buffalo this year, Lou, with Kyer Elam, right? It was like, yeah, they needed a corner, but were they going to force one? Well, they just happened to luck into Kyer Elam being the best player on the board at the same time.
And then they can get a James Cook after that, too.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. And Gino, that's the ideal scenario because especially, too, you look at this past draft, there was one quarterback that went in the first 2 rounds. And so, there's a lot of teams next year that also have 2 first-round picks like the Eagles, and there's a lot of competition for those quarterbacks. So, yeah, if you're in the game, you're going to have a chance. It's a deeper class. You got multiple picks, and, Howie Roseman's more aggressive than other teams. He might be willing to do more to get that guy, but more competition is going to make it more difficult. So it would be nice to just have the guy in-house be the guy with this roster. And then you can just, like you said, worry about the luxury picks. Like, okay, now what else can we build here? Should we take, what are we going to do on defense here? Can we just take a safety for the first time in forever or a cornerback and not have to worry about the most important position? It'd be really ideal. And we'll see what happens because, you can't lie. Even with a good roster, you can still see, Gino, who's holding back the Tennessee Titans, like who held back the San Francisco 49ers a lot of the time, who held back the Cleveland Browns. It was Tannehill. It was Garoppolo. It was Baker Mayfield. Like you can try to gourmet up a McDonald's cheeseburger, but you most of the time are going to be able to tell it's a McDonald's cheeseburger. So I think you'll know even this year if it's Hurts elevating or if it's the team around him elevating, so there, like you said, it'll be make or break, and there won't be another year of, well, let's just see, let's add a few more pieces and let's find out. You don't take 3 years to do that anymore.
No, and not in today's NFL, that's for sure. And I want to be in a situation where I am like Buffalo, where I am like Cincinnati, where I can just add the additional pieces that
Same.
will take you to that next level. Even the Chargers, right? I mean, you sign J.C. Jackson, you trade for Von Miller, you go out and you have the luxury that you could say, okay, we have a hole on the interior of our offensive line. We got the pieces we needed in free agency. We have the best young quarterback in the West right now, outside of Pat Mahomes. Let's just go get the offensive lineman that we always knew we needed to take, but we can have that luxury because the rest of our roster is so loaded. And I don't want to be in a position that Washington's in, right, Lou, where you're like, oh, let's just draft Sam Howell in the 3rd round and see what happens with Carson Wentz. Like, no, we need to just either get off the pot or just move on from Jalen Hurts completely, or just stick with them. You can't sit here and say, we'll bring in another guy in the 2nd round, let them battle out.
And it's why, as much as I liked Willis or Corral and Ritter this year, if they weren't going to take a guy in the 1st round, I didn't want to do that middling. Right. Let's just find out and have a couple options. To me, that's not the way to do it with quarterback.
Route.
You just can't do that. And so, I agree, man. Like, it'll still be, even if they're winning this year, it'll still be based on how they're winning. Like, if DeVonta Smith, AJ Brown, and Dallas Goedert are not getting involved and they're winning, that's not going to be good enough. And we saw for those other teams, they were winning consistently, and it wasn't good enough for San Francisco. It wasn't good enough for Cleveland. It might not be good enough for Tennessee. They did take Malik Willis in the 3rd round, and he could replace Dan Hill eventually if he's not, taking that Titans team into the, later rounds of the playoffs. So it's fascinating. I can't wait for this season. He's got every opportunity, and it isn't thanks large part to himself. Like, we got to give Jalen Hurts credit for recruiting AJ Brown. I want to get into that a little bit more coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles.
The only thing sweeter than having a high-profile offense in Philadelphia once again for the first time in nearly a decade is that sweet Built Bar that we eat every single day. Lou and I are addicted to these things, and there's a reason why. I mean, they're fantastic in taste. They're healthy. You don't feel really full afterwards. You just feel satisfied. You don't have that guilt after you eat a whole bag of Kit Kats, which I do all of the time. I just go and grab a Built Bar. They're only up to 170 calories, 4 grams of carbs, 4 grams of sugar, and almost as much protein as any sort of meat that you can eat for dinner. It is 17 grams of protein per bar. Have it before you work out, after you work out, on the run. Bring it with you on a hike. Bring it with you if you're just hanging out with the guys on a weekend. Keep a snack in your pocket. Always make sure you're satisfied throughout the day. And these Built Bars, they will do it. Their churro marshmallow puff bar is by far my favorite. I mean, these things taste like a campfire. Go and get them today. Get them in the variety pack. Get your favorite. Make sure you use the promo code LOCKED15. That's LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order at built.com today.
All right, Eagles fans, Louis DiBiase and Gino Camilleri wrapping up this Wednesday edition of Locked On Eagles. We're Locked On QB1 today, diving into the amazing opportunity that Jalen Hurts has next year with now A.J. Brown added to an awesome young offense. One of the best offenses to me, Gino, long-term that's built across the NFL right now when it comes to just the potential on paper. Very Cincinnati Bengals-like, you know what I mean? With just 3 young, good receivers, a top-tier offensive line, though, that Cincinnati didn't have. They've got their Joe Mixon and Miles Sanders. It's now down to Jalen Hurts and see if he can elevate the team like Joe Burrow has for Cincinnati. But one thing, we got to give credit to Jalen, Gino, is he did help give himself this opportunity by bringing in A.J. Brown. Like, I know, again, it was a trade and Jalen Hurts wasn't the only reason that A.J. Brown came in. But in the NFL nowadays, players can control where they go, even if they don't have a no-trade clause. If A.J. Brown said, I'm not coming to Philadelphia, we saw it this offseason, Gino. While I think it's true that a lot of available receivers maybe didn't want to join this offense, A.J. Brown did. And if he didn't, he wasn't coming to Philly. And a huge reason he wanted to come here is because of Jalen Hurts and his ability to build relationships and become a leader. I mean, he's been friends with him since Jalen tried to get him to Alabama. He's been recruiting him for, 6+ years now. And that's a huge positive to have in your quarterback. We got to find out if he can keep him healthy or happy with his arm. But to bring him in, that's on Jalen too.
Oh, 100%. I mean, you can't say the things around the NFL today aren't almost mirroring what happened in the NBA about.
Yeah, player relationships have a lot to do with it, man.
Yeah, I think the LeBron James decision, as notorious as it was a huge step in power to the players and empowering them to be able to make decisions. And I'm glad that these guys can do that, man. They're the guys that put out the product that you and I talk about. Like, I love Jeffrey Lurie to death, but he's not the guy I turn my TV on Sundays for. It's A.J. Brown. So to see guys like this or the Hollywood Brown trade with Kyler Murray saying that they've played together since their days at Oklahoma, Yeah, that's only going to make
or
your
Derek Carr and
product
Devontae
better.
Adams. It's not a coincidence
Yeah,
that these guys are
exactly.
just landing with all their buds and their former quarterbacks.
Yeah, no, and that's one of the things you want to see in today's NFL. Like, if you want to see a better product, why not put together guys that have a better relationship? Like, you want the most cohesive units. And in Philadelphia, what we always really look back to is how close-knit that 2017 team was at the time until we found out afterwards. But you saw the camaraderie with those guys. Like, they wanted to play together. We know the videos of dreams and nightmares. Like, just seeing guys like Jalen Hurts going to AJ Brown's daughter's birthday party and doing things like that. I see that going on a lot in Buffalo with their young core. Like, those guys, they hang out off the field. They're friends. Like, you want these guys to be friends. You don't want to have anonymous sources in your locker room really spoiling the party for everybody else. Power to AJ Brown, power to Jalen Hurts. Like, let's keep this thing going. Bringing in good football players too. It's not like you're bringing in a Dorial Green Beckham. You're bringing in a top 10 bona fide receiver.
Who's 24.
And the Eagle, who's 24 years old. And the last, I would say, wrong that Howie Roseman righted was, to bring this whole conversation full circle, is when we were talking about setting up Wentz for success, the one thing that we never got was that trade for that wide receiver. The Stephon Diggs you missed out on. The DeAndre Hopkins you missed out on. You missed out on an opportunity to potentially get a guy like, let's say, Julio Jones, if you wanted to do that at the time. And now you just went and completely washed all of that and all the history away, because now that product is real. Now this guy is on the field, and what did you give up? An unknown 18th overall pick that you probably would have used on a wide receiver anyway. The 103rd
a Treylon Burks,
pick.
that's an AJ Brown comp anyway, like Tennessee did, and how we talked about just taking the sure thing, who's 24, and that is AJ Brown.
And look at everything that they've gotten from this Carson Wentz trade, Lou. They were able to get DeVonta Smith. They were able to get AJ Brown. They have another first-round pick next year. They have an additional 2024 second-round pick, all because they were willing to cut bait and know that, hey, maybe the best was in the past, and if we could set this thing up with some bona fide players, whoever has the keys to the car should be able to drive this thing. And I think
it makes you feel better about it. Yeah, you know, you never wanted your franchise quarterback, the things to go the way it did, but you couldn't have rebounded better. And that's really always been the theme of Roseman and this Eagles team. And they're set up really nicely, Gino, heading into 2022 and long term, because again, they have their cake and they can eat it too, because if Jalen, can't utilize this offense, they've got 2 first-round picks next year. And it was just a masterful job. And everybody knows that, I'm more hot and cold with Howie Roseman, but I've always given him credit where credit is due. And once again, he did a really nice job this draft process. And he's got an exciting team on paper for sure. And we'll continue to dive into that team all week long, Monday through Friday on all podcast platforms. Subscribe for an Eagles show Monday through Friday on YouTube as well in video form. And we're always talking Birds after the show as well. Hit us up on Twitter at LockedOnBirds, at TBLC LOE, and at GC24_football. Thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Make sure as well, with all the crazy news around the league, that the Locked On NFL podcast is your second listen. All the NFL news in under 30 minutes, free and available on all platforms. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. As always, thank you for downloading, thank you for watching and listening, and let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.